Kingsport MTPO Executive Board to order on behalf of Chairman James Phillips, who's not able to be here today. Welcome. 14 minutes after 2. We need to do an executive board roll call. Secretary.
You'll just move to that first item, then I'll do
General information, attendance roll call. Leslie.
Okay, so we're doing an in-person meeting, but we're trying remote access. Obviously, it's not working that great. This will probably be our only meeting like this in this room because we should be moving to the new building in the next couple of weeks. So then we get to play with it all again and see if we can get it to work. We have only got, we've got 4 attendees: Eric Wilson, Mary Butler, Michael Dick, and Mitchell Elliott. So I assume Michael Dick and Eric Wilson will be promoted to panelists during project updates to give the project updates. We have Elizabeth Watkins joining us from Federal Highway, KB from TDOT Nashville, Matt Messervy from TDOT Nashville, Troy, TDOT Region 1, and Jim Meyer, who's the consultant with AECOM for the long range plan, who will be giving an update today. Of course, attendees, if you want to say anything, you will need to raise your hand, put it in the chat box, put it in the Q&A so we can watch those boxes. Since we do have remote attendees, I will do the votes and stuff by roll call. And I will go ahead and do the attendance roll call now. We have Vice Chair Jimmy Adkins, present. Blake Ayler, present. Chase Milner, present. Rhonda Sawyer, present. Michael Thompson,
present.
And Amber Torbett,
present.
And Michael Thompson does have a proxy for, to vote for James Phillips. The Churchill Mount Carmel Hawkins County rep is not present. Jimmy?
Thank you. Move on to item number 2, public comment on agenda items. Anyone wishing to take 5 minutes from the public to talk about agenda items and agenda items only. I'll open the floor for any discussion.
If you all online can't hear us at any time, just put it in the chat box or something so I'll know.
Hearing none, the public comment on agenda items period is closed by proclamation. Moving on to the 3rd agenda item, approval of minutes for the February 4th, 2021 meeting. So everybody's had a chance to look at those. That was emailed previously. Great job on those, Leslie. Are there any questions, comments, concerns? I'll entertain a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second that motion. On the motion by Ron and a second by Blake, we have a motion to approve the minutes as presented. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Roll call.
Oh, sorry. Roll call. I'm not roll call.
Vice Chair Jimmy Adkins.
Aye.
Blake Ayler.
Aye.
Chase Milner.
Aye.
Rhonda Sawyer.
Aye.
Michael Thompson.
Aye.
Amber Torbett.
Aye.
Roll call vote. We're big and proud. All right. Item number 4, adoption of the FY22 UPWP Virginia version.
Yes, and I want to share a different screen. So let me see how I can do that.
While Leslie's putting that together, I will tell the board and the public know we have done a lot of work on this version of it. And I definitely want to thank Bill and Leslie and Blake. Between the 3 of them and what little bit I was able to do, we've put a lot of time and effort and energy into the document. And it's actually going to be a little bit different than it was last year. It's going to be much more different this coming year. Just for time's sake, we're going to I'll make the suggestion of the technical committee to come together I guess at least by Q4 of this calendar year, to the end of the year, we start looking at the UPWP to do an overhaul of the document, just for the sake of, I think, some changes to PDOT, some things we want to focus on with PDOT, kind of get a little streamlined, and even maybe a little bit smaller document to help save some pages for people's printers. But Bill, Leslie. Sure.
Let me say first, this was sent out with the agenda packets. I just have these final tables pulled up because the highlighted yellow items is what changed since it was sent out for public review. And it's basically just some of the VDOT money.
Okay, it's always a little bit hard to explain work program
They said, speak up, Bill.
You gotta merge the
Not working,
the
thanks.
wishes of,
Not
not working.
Mm-mm.
Her computer's working.
It's always a little bit difficult, but we get through this. We have to approve the Virginia edition, which is basically the same thing as the Tennessee edition, just basically a little bit, a couple of differences. Mostly just the title of it. I always joke that it's like the Times News, you have a Scott Twain edition, it has a different headline, the rest of the paper is like one. So, anyway, we are making a few changes this year. This is the Virginia edition. We'll adopt or hope to adopt today. Their fiscal year starts July the 1st, so work program will need to be adopted at least a month ahead of time. We're probably a couple of weeks ahead of what we usually are, but anyway, get it adopted for Virginia and then come back in usually early August and adopt the Tennessee edition for TDOT for funding from that source. And of course, their fiscal year starts October 1, so we have to deal with the two different fiscal years, two different arrangements. And it has changed some, mostly from an organizational format. We've, in the past, we've had 6 tasks, and we're still going to have 6 tasks, but a couple of them have changed out. We'll get to that here in a minute. And we usually just list under these tasks sort of bulleted, sort of a loose knit bulleted list of activities goes under the task. And this year we are enumerating those, so it's just easy to find, easy to organize. You can look up subtasks for each one of those tasks, and I'll go through those. It makes you understand a little bit better, and makes you helps you like to find particular subtasks, particular items that you may be looking for. And of course, it's in the table of contents as well, so you're able to actually find, let's say, travel modeling is a subtask of monitoring planning. And you can find it in the table of contents, or you can find it in the document a lot easier than what we're doing. So, but the work program, for those that don't know what it is basically just an annual outline of what the MTPO is going to be doing for the next year in Virginia and the next 2 years in Tennessee. Really, we'll come back next spring and adopt the Virginia 23 edition, but we'll probably make some changes in Tennessee as well. So it's really not every 2 years we change Tennessee. It's really every year we come back and make some changes in the spring, some amendments, some budget issues. So, but it has to be done by, the timing is important. And we do this for Federal Highway Administration, Federal Transit, for TDOT and PDOT. If we don't do this, we don't get funding, we don't have an MPO. So you can see it's pretty important. And that lays out what we're going to do. The funding, of course, comes from FTA and Federal Highway, the matching funds from Linvisco, or matching soft match with City of Kingsport, those staff. So that's where the funding comes from. And most of the money is spent here in Kingsport, but there is the Linvisco gets good share of PDOT money. Doing a good job over there. So, of course, PDOT, they get not exactly the same funding, but state planning and research funding, SPR funding. It's like these guys get, you guys in Nashville, and Troy, you guys get that as well. Probably over explanation there, but it's something that we haven't heard before. Let's take a look at the subtask real quick. We'll be done. Again, we have 6 tasks of program administration. That's running the MPO, operating, finance, and so forth. Takes quite a bit of work. Thank you, Susan, for doing all that. Because she does a good job on the books, on the finance, and helping run the MPO. She does a great job. In the minutes, too. In the travel data collection minutes and analysis, and what that is collecting traffic counts, crash records, things like that. We convert into reports, both on the Virginia side and the Tennessee side. I think Virginia does count every 3rd year, every 3 years. Tennessee does theirs every year, I believe. But VDOT does theirs every 3rd year for Scott County and the rest of Southwest Virginia. And of course, analyzing this data, they show up in the safety audits and things like that. We don't necessarily do here, but a lot of times we will request a safety audit for a particular problem area. VDOT will do those type of things. Short range planning is the tip is substituted out. Short range planning, which is the Transportation Improvement Program, which is the project that's been worked on right now. we emphasize a lot on long-range planning, but we also have the short-range plan. These are projects that are right in front of us that are getting attention, getting funding, getting scheduled, and getting off the ground and implemented. And this is how you move a project from the long-range plan into reality and work through the short-range planning TIP program. Very important. And of course, there's a long-range plan we're going to hear a lot about here in a few minutes from our consultants at AECOM. They're working really hard on long-range plan. We do this every 5 years, and I'll be presenting that here in just a few minutes. Multimodal planning, which is bike ped and transit. We have public transit system, TRAI, CATS, MEOC. I think it's now MTPO, what you guys are calling it.
Yeah, they've, I guess, the transit arm of Mountain Power Systems.
Right.
We bring it to Mountain Power Transit.
Right. So dealing with the transit systems, of course, the bike peds on the front corner right now. We're working real hard with Gresham Smith to do a bike ped plan, and that'll be published here pretty soon. They're getting ready to wrap that up. So we'll get a presentation on that here pretty soon. And that's exciting to see what they're going to come up with on the bike ped plan for the entire area, not just Kingsport, Scott County and Hawkins County and so forth. So got a lot of interest in that. It seems like the bicycle thing has exploded in the last year. It's not just COVID. I think we've been building for some time. We're trying to respond to that by developing some improvements in the routes and new facilities for bicycling as well. So very important for that. And in special studies, this last task is new. We are working on Leslie's going to be managing a special project of the Center Street plan. If we got the urban transportation planning grant, guys, and actually probably can hear me now, that we appreciate that grant to look at refurbishing Center Street from Sullivan Street to Fort Henry Drive, I believe. We're going to look at safety issues, traffic flow, aesthetics. That's going to be important. Improving the aesthetics and traffic calming, things like that for Center Street, which is one of our oldest streets in the city and does need a good hard look at improvements. And looking forward to working with whomever on that to get that study going, and that's going to be managing that. So that's basically the 6 tasks that we have work program. As far as details, probably won't jump into it too much, but just real quickly, admin is public involvement, financial management work program, Title VI, travel collection. I mentioned that counts, and we're doing a lot of bicycle counts that goes with that. We're going to be working with program to provide accounting. We're looking at providing 9 different bicycle counters to distribute throughout the city to get those numbers in. It will help provide the implementation of every facility. And then the short range plan again, tip, long range plan is to complete the plan we've got that we're working on now and monitor changes to that plan as we go through the next 3 or 4 years. There's air quality issues, which thank goodness we're in good shape air quality wise in Kingsport and Sullivan County. We weren't for a long time. We're borderline non-attainment, and we have really cleaned up the air. And it's not just mobile sources and static sources as well. These have done a great job. We've improved the air quality in Kingsport. You can go out at night, see the stars. Okay.
Nobody's complaining.
I'm texting
We're
her.
choosing, I can text.
So you go out and see the stars at night. And honestly, when I was growing up, you couldn't see anything at night. Now you can see a lot. It shows you the air's been cleared up. It's taken 20, 30, 40 years, or however old I am. But you can actually see the difference throughout a non-attainment situation. Really good. Your non-attainment gets sanctioned economically. You can't grow industry, you can't grow business because of your air quality. So it's very important. Lastly, the long range plan, again, we're working on that right now. I'm going to stop. Any questions about the work program? Beat to death. But we look forward to another busy year. We've had a really busy year this year. Hopefully, next
Hey, Bill.
fund as far as funding and budgets, the tables are in. Sorry.
Well,
For the Virginia portion, are there any special projects highlighted? Or is that just in the tip and future long range?
I think we'll probably reconsider, relook at the state route 20, or US 23 here in Weber City and Scott County, because we've been talking about access management for some time. I think we'll probably bring that back up, look at it, like, I know that's not funded, but it's something that we can still do local, evaluation study.
Actually, it is funded. We will be studying Route 23 from the state line all the way back up to Weber City's intersection. And the primary reason behind that, VDOT has initiated, Office of Intermodal Planning and Investment underneath the Secretary's office has initiated a new study program called Project Pipeline. It's become a big deal within the Commonwealth. It's the first time it's ever been done. It will create 5 studies within each district every other year between smart scale. So it will rotate and be 5 in-depth studies, and it looks at our top VTrans needs. And VTrans are state's transportation plans. So it uses metrics to highlight needs within the entire Commonwealth. We ranked those and numbered those, and we have priority 1 locations. We took the top ones and worked our way down. And as we worked through our list, we developed what was our top 5 priorities within the district. Within the MTPO boundary, we do have 1 study of those 5, which will be from the state line back up. And it has been studied twice in the past, within the last 15 years. Those studies are dated and older. They're going to take those, build off of those, and then we will be able to make some recommendations within the corridor. The hopes with that pipeline is that it will set localities up part of the MTPO to apply for funding mechanisms within Virginia. Most importantly, is smart scale, as everybody knows, that's the primary funding mechanism for all of our highway dollars. But we still do have HSIP, transportation alternatives, and some of those more common funds. So it will give a palette of options to Scott County and to the MTPO to apply for some funds. Now, that is technically, when we went through this and looked at it, we listed Project Pipeline in here because the CTV has officially not approved those listed projects yet. They won't approve them, unfortunately, until next week. I have no reason to believe that that project will fall off our list, but it is not one that I deemed, when I looked at the special studies category that was on here, based on how Virginia typically handles their UPWP, that category is one that you don't typically see within Virginia UPWPs. And it seems to be one that is more specific to TDOT as opposed to VDOT. So we put Project Pipeline underneath long range planning. So long range planning has Project Pipeline in there because it will be a long range effort that may end up coming potentially every other year within the MTPO. I don't think so, based on looking at the needs. I think that's over a large portion. So that will be an area we look at, and we're hopeful that the MTPO will put an application in for that section of 23 next round, as well as Scott County will hopefully put one in. So we're hoping to get some improvements in 23 because it's certainly needed. We had a funded HSIP project to take care of the corridor, and the commissioner changed the guidelines of HSIP, and it was removed off the funded project list, unfortunately. So we're hoping to pick back up where we kind of left off.
So State Route 23, is that also, is that the same as Center Street when it comes through?
That's 36,
That's
I'm sorry.
36.
23 is Weber City.
That's what I was just getting my alignment. It's basically the same corridor.
But it's 36.
Yeah.
Tennessee.
Right. Okay.
US 23 technically goes down the interstate.
Yeah.
So it's the same route until you get over the state line and then it's on to interstate. US 23 until it becomes Interstate 26
Okay.
at Stone Drive.
And again, the only difference in these, this document and the one that you all received with the agenda packet are the highlighted amounts for Virginia fiscal year 22. We went ahead and plugged in 23 numbers, even though we have to approve it again next year. So these numbers also changed in the subtask or the task tables throughout the document, but I just thought it'd be easier to pull it up to show them all at one and then the carryover. So the action today is going to be to approve the Virginia version subject to changes from TDOT, because since we don't adopt TDOTs until the August meeting, there are going to be some changes coming to the TDOT information, which will not affect the Virginia information.
And of course, we did split the SPR contract to 4 different tasks.
just to alleviate some of the, maybe some possible anxiety from anybody, the highlighted numbers on the charts, that wasn't, that doesn't match up what was emailed out. We have been working these numbers, so we all feel pretty confident those are right numbers in the right places. It's just been a
We've,
process.
we don't have that many studies going on, but look around and see what really happened for road improvements. You'll realize there's not a lot of planning, but as we got 93, they were at 93, they were at 36, they were at 3%. They were out 126. Those are all improvements. Actually, 93 is under construction. A lot of projects coming up for construction.
Any other questions, comments, concerns on the FY22 UPWP? I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve it as adopted.
Roll call vote.
Vice Chair Jimmy Adkins,
Aye.
Blake Ayler,
Aye.
Chase Milner,
Aye.
Rhonda Sawyer,
Aye.
Michael Thompson,
Aye.
Amber Torbett.
Aye.
Thank you. Next agenda item we have number 5, long-range transportation plan, goals and objectives and plan update. Jim, the floor is yours, my friend. Talk loud.
All right, good afternoon. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. Leslie, I guess I'll share
He
my
should be sharing
screen.
his screen.
Let me see.
Can you load mine?
You see that okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. So, all right, let me pull up the agenda here. See if it's going. All right, there we go. All right, let me know if there's any audio issues or video issues. So we wanted to provide an update today. So want to take maybe about 30 minutes or so to cover really 4 items. The first is the LRTP goals and objectives. We'll go through that pretty quickly. We've discussed this before. You've received proposed goals, objectives with your packet. And you can see at the bottom there, there is an action item for the adoption of that, of those when we get to the end of the presentation. We'll give you an update on public and stakeholder involvement that we've done. Want to spend some time going over needs and opportunities. I'll provide a little more detail when we get to that section. And then go through next steps on where we're heading here over the next next couple months. So as far as the goals and objectives go, to provide a little background on this, we started with the 2040 LRTP goals and objectives, and we reviewed those and we went through it with the MTPO staff. But we also wanted to come back and just make sure as context that we were responding, that those goals and objectives respond to the FAST Act planning requirements. And so we took a look at that, and we also took a look at it from the perspective of the statewide LRTPs. So obviously the TDOT plan, the VTrans, those plans are responding to FAST Act. But ultimately, we want to make that connection of everything's tying together here and supporting the Kingsport goals and objectives are supporting the statewide and responding back to FAST Act. So we have this connection here. The Kingsport goals really line up with 3 main areas highlighted in yellow there with livability, sustainability, and prosperity. And then the bulleted objectives underneath there, all in some respect are related back in terms of economic prosperity, for example, tying back to the economic goals from statewide and FAST Act. So we feel very confident that the goals and objectives that we've developed for this plan are consistent with those items there. So this slide is a summary of the goals and objectives. Don't worry, I'm not gonna read this, but there are 3 things highlighted there in red, and just wanted to talk briefly about what we the changes that we made. So under goal number 1, livability, where you see the red text, that used to be worded differently for transit, and the objective was increased transit and other transportation demand management opportunities as a means of providing affordable transportation options. And one of the things as we have gone through with COVID and everything, we thought that there was maybe a better way to kind of rephrase this. And through some of our stakeholder meetings, we really thought that there was more of this discussion about strengthening kind of local regional partnerships to advance viable transportation options. So that's the first change. The second change over under goal 3, we really felt there should be some reference to equity in here. And so we added in support equitable transportation investments. And then the third change that we made under prosperity was item C, where we pulled tourism out. And when you look at the FAST Act planning requirements, tourism is highlighted there. And we felt there was an opportunity to capitalize that as its own objective. So that's a very quick overview of what we were looking at. I'll maybe see if anybody has questions here, but again, we're going to come back to this at the end of the presentation for a formal adoption of those. Any questions or comments?
Jim, I only have one question. This is Troy. Talking about the support of multimodal investments, especially bike and pedestrian enhancements is great. The promotion of tourism in that, we have to do that regardless to make sure that we meet environmental justice and promote everyone a way to be able to get around within the mobility, whether it's transit, bike, ped, walking, or, using their own personal vehicle. That promote tourism almost clouds that up a little bit, saying, well, the only reason we're going to put in a bike lane or sidewalk is going to promote that's where we're looking at, like our green belts and our sidewalks that are going to the parks and things that are tourism related only. And I think that we would get some pushback on that, especially from I would think possibly from our multimodal division on that as well. Mm-hmm. Just as a thought there, because I don't want that to get in there and then they get thrown out saying, well, why are you only building bike lanes or sidewalks for tourists? Let's build it for the people who live here. And especially the ones that have that don't have, other options or abilities for vehicles.
Mm-hmm. So I think at one point we had maybe the piece about bicycle and pedestrian out of there. Would that address your concern, Troy, if it was just more multimodal focused, or is there?
I think multimodal to promote tourism is great, and I think that would be good to help support the local and regional economy. But I think there may be, the next one talks about land use development patterns that reduce transportation costs and expenditures and improve accessibility for all. And you might be able to just pop in there something about specifically on the bike lanes or pedestrian enhancements.
Okay.
Or, put it in both. Because it'd be good to do it for tourism, but it's also good for all users across the board. So everyone's included there and we don't get caught up on the EJ issue.
I got it. Okay. Do we want to revisit this when we come back to adopting the goals, or any further discussion now, I guess?
I think we can talk about it when we adopt the goals.
Okay. Very good. I will move on to give you an update on our stakeholder involvement. Let's see here. So we've been using the virtual room as our primary outreach tool for involvement. So we did have some good numbers here that we're really pleased to see. We had almost 500 unique visitors come to the site. So they had access to look around the room, go to the online mapping, take a survey. We ended up with close to about 100 surveys completed. We had 175 map markers placed on the online mapping tool, and I'll show you a summary of some of that information. I'll go over some of the other stuff we've done too. In addition, we've done some outreach with stakeholder meetings. We've met one-on-one with some stakeholders in the area. So, and I think the MPO has done a great job helping us out here. We've, they've helped with a lot of direct emails. We had some newspaper, TV coverage. We posted this in water bills. I think we've mentioned this before, but, Facebook and other agencies getting it out as well. So we're really pleased with that, especially during COVID here. So just to share with you some of the mapping comments that we received, and we're going to post this information. We're going to update the virtual room with some of these results, so you'll be able to look at this a little bit closer. Out of those 175 markers that were placed, about 2/3 were driving comments, and those are the ones showing up in green. And a lot of the times, if you see like the interchange area of 81 and 26, might look like 2 or 3 comments there. If you actually zoom in, there's a number, probably 4 or 5 times more related to that area. So just wanted to kind of highlight that. About 24% were walking and bike comments, and then just a few comments on public transportation, and we had a few other comments related to kind of land use and development. So if you break it down a little bit, and again, just kind of running through this quickly, the driving markers, 40 of the comments of the 120 driving comments were related to safety, those being kind of that gold color that you see on there. And then 35 related to traffic congestion. And then we had 11 comments related to maintenance. The other ones, such as high travel speeds, freight issues, were kind of scattered throughout. I think when you look at it again, the interchange areas start to pop out with a number of concerns. 81, 26. When you get up to 26 and 93, we have some congestion concerns along Stone Drive over on the east side here. 36 was showing up. So I think nothing really kind of jumped out at us as being anything new that we weren't seeing or hearing. Obviously, when we got to the bike comments, we had fewer comments. A lot of these were related to safety or improving bicycle facilities. And then the walking comments along with the transit. Again, only 3 transit comments. One talked about kind of adding a bus stop. One comment was about regional mobility and connections to the Tri-City areas. But overall, I think if you look in the kind of in this area, I don't know if that's showing up on the screen where I'm circling, but there were a number of improved walking that focused in on adding sidewalks, and we'll come back to that in a moment as well. But Troy, to your point, when we start to talk about a lot of the EJ equity issues, adding sidewalks and bus stops were really kind of the primary focus. Again, those maps we're going to have out there for you soon to take a look at. We did conduct these stakeholder interviews in April, really had some great information. We broke them down into the groups that you see there. The first 5 were smaller groups that we held, were about an hour to an hour and a half conversations. And we organized those around safety, healthy communities, freight movement, regional mobility, also primarily focusing in on transit and some local transit. We had an equity and EJ partners that we talked about those issues and transportation issues. And then that economic development workshop, a number of you participated in that. And we talked about, we broke that down. That was a larger 2-hour working session. We broke the area down into like 6 different sub areas and kind of talked about what the existing needs are, how transportation could help support economic development activity in those various areas. Just to give you a sense of who was invited. Again, Leslie and MPO staff was really helpful in pulling together kind of a list for these various groups. I think we had generally between 4 to 6 people, maybe, if I recall correctly, in each of these, but we did really get some great information. The equity and EJ discussions, healthy communities were really interesting. So a lot of good information came out of that. So we do have notes from that. We're also finalizing kind of high-level key themes that we'll put out there as well. But we did want to share with you just some takeaways. And again, a lot of this stuff may not be a big surprise to you, but it also reinforces what we're hearing. In terms of safety, I think a lot of these areas that are mentioned here have been discussed. Blake's talked about 23, a number of times. Safety in terms of the new high school and access out around 357 in that area. We also heard from some police officers who talked about some other locations on the east side of town where they don't necessarily show up as a high crash location, but one of the things they said that when there is a crash, they're reporting to crashes that end up with people going to the hospital. So it's type of information that we can't get from just looking at the data. So some really good information there. I think on the freight side, again, not a big surprise here. 8126 interchange came up a number of times in the discussion. The importance of adding truck climbing lanes and accommodating the slower vehicles as they accelerate onto the interstate, enhancing access to existing industries and how we can do that. We heard a lot about even talking with some of the stakeholders about maintenance and safety being priorities for them, signage and the importance of lane markings, and helping out to get to existing facilities. And then truck parking came up, and this was actually something that the stakeholders that we were talking about felt very strongly about the importance of having this in the LRTP, that looking at truck parking comprehensively from a statewide perspective, but also recognizing that those locations have to be spaced appropriate for trucks to have the ability to park in the Kingsport area is really critical. And so that was something that the plan or stakeholders again felt should be called out. In terms of regional mobility, I think the number one thing that came up obviously with transit is just the hours, service hours, that service ending kind of late afternoon is very difficult. We have these developing areas, again, the southeast area kind of with the airport, future growth along the 357 interchange was really another area. And then also when you start to look at service, and we'll cover this in the next section here in a little more detail, but going west along US 11W out towards Mount Carmel and Churchill. Enhanced coordination. So we actually, on our stakeholder call, we had NetTrans, MEOC, and we had representatives from Johnson City and Bristol MPOs on there as well. And I think one of the things that came out of this, Blake or Troy, I don't remember, maybe one of you guys even threw this out there, but we were talking a lot about, hearing about regional mobility needs. And one of the things that came out of this was potentially understanding what the regional transit needs are, and perhaps actually conducting a transit study for that. In terms of healthy communities, a lot of it focused around the Greenbelt, really expanding opportunities there, increasing walking opportunities in general, just talking more about neighborhood connections, walking to schools, making that easier, adding sidewalks, and increasing access to medical facilities and exercise or recreational opportunities. Again, there were a lot of good discussion about areas, and we have some notes on that, but just high level to summarize that. The equity, environmental justice, again, we heard right away about limited transit service hours impacting jobs, medical access, regional transit connections, getting to the VA facilities in Johnson City, adding sidewalks, safe crossings. We heard this about 11W out on the western side where the stakeholder was saying a lot of the low-income individuals will actually just walk to jobs along the corridor and maybe fast food, for example, and then accessible bus stops again. And then we finally that workshop where a number of themes came out of that: maintenance, safety, roadway connectivity, again in the southeast portion, and the importance of coordinating land use and site planning in a number of those areas as well. So I will pause there. I know that's a lot of information to digest. Don't know if anybody has any questions or comments, or if you participated in any of these groups and have any additional insight, please feel free to share.
Hey, Jim, it's Jimmy. First off, great job. TRAI's been doing a great job in outreach and all that. One of the things you had mentioned was the regional transit initiative, I guess is what we'll call it, because it's not got feet yet. But I know Blake's got an update on that, and I'll turn over to Blake to let us know where we're at now.
Yeah, Jimmy, you had mentioned it during that meeting. We had a great conversation about, I had pitched the idea about there's always been this conversation about regional mobility. But to my knowledge, there's never been a study within the MTOs, the 3 MTOs, and about how you truly have a regional transit system or even a thought of that and how it would work. And we talk about the extension of service areas and fringe areas and rural regions of the entire Northeast Tennessee area. So as I had pitched that, I know that TDOT had said that they would definitely, consider it. And I had said that I would go to LRTP, which is the Department of Rail and Public Transit on Virginia's side of it, control something of that nature. They had gotten back with me a few weeks ago that they are more than willing to partner with TDOT and with the region to study the Virginia's portion of that and to talk about how we could structure a study of this nature. So with that being said, I know VDOT does stand ready to take a look at the regional transit issues if TDOT is willing to partner on a study of that nature. Because the TDOT region is much larger, I understand that. But I didn't know if Troy or Rhonda or anybody at TDOT had any sort of update on that.
This is Troy. I did reach out and am still working with our multimodal division. They're kind of in between directors at the moment. Kind of making it a little bit interesting. I'm trying to get some final answers on these, Blake. But I am working with Caitlin McClanahan, who is the manager dealing with this as far as looking at the options of what we can do at this time. But it's kind of again with the movement around it in their division, it's kind of made it shook it up a little bit and slowed it down just a smidge. But we are definitely we're interested. We're just trying to figure out on how to do it right now at this point and what we want to how Multimodal wants to proceed with this as well. Unless Matt's got any other updates.
Yeah, I was going to say we're definitely in support of this as well. Troy is correct with what he's saying, but I think we are definitely interested in looking at a regional option for this for the Tri-Cities area.
Isn't there some? This is Bill. There's some parts of the state that has a van pool program. You guys familiar with that?
Yes, sir. The van pool program is kind of, it's almost like a secret in a way. Like it's not promoted as well as it could be. And we're looking into that right now. That's one of the things that I've been trying to do since I've been here is to try to promote more of the state van pool program, or maybe even, provide a contracted vendor option. But that would be part of the study, I would say. Or at least if it isn't, that's what we would like to have.
I think it might work, and I know in Virginia, you've got a lot of parking around lots. Assume that's a van. Like,
Park and ride? I'm sorry,
Yeah,
yeah,
here.
there's a little bit of trouble hearing you, but I think you said park and ride lots, is that right?
Yeah, Matt, he did say that, and
Okay.
actually one of the current projects that we have on, I guess it's still in the MPO boundary, is route and access management project through Smart Scale that includes a park and ride right there on 2358. So there are 2 formals and probably a half a dozen informal that's in the MPO boundaries, at least on this side of the mountain. So, or the other side of the mountain. But yeah, Matt and Troy, thank you all for supporting that, and keep on moving on that. And the big thing that I'll task you both with is the same with Blake, communication. Keep us all in the loop. Let us know what we can do. It's easy for something like this to fall between the cracks, but bring BDOT, TDOT, MTPO, WISCO, FHWA, everybody together for this, and especially our transit partners. They're going to be part of it as well. I think Mitch is on. Mitch and Nikki did a great job putting together an application, and I had to look it up here. It's for the National Rural Transit Assistance Program Community Rides Grant. So hopefully they'll get some good news out of that. I think they work with their friends at CATS on trying to set up some real interconnectability for a ridership to and fro. So there's already movement for that initiative. So keep up the communications, all we ask, and thank you all for doing that.
Sure thing. Looking forward to it.
Kim, turn it back over to you if there's anything else.
Yeah, that's a great discussion. Glad to hear that's moving forward. I know, and I should say on the regional mobility, we had NetTrans on there, and maybe I mentioned this already, but MEOC was on there as well. So it was a really good discussion. Okay, so moving into the third area, needs and opportunities. So just a little background on this. I think what we're presenting here is kind of a simplified story of, obviously the LRTP can be very technical, have a lot of projects, fiscal constraint element. But what we're trying to do to really, before we move into the project evaluation, which is coming up, is give you the story. And if somebody came to you and said, what is the Kingsport transportation system about? What are the needs? Where are we heading in the future? This is kind of what we've put together. And so I'll go through this and I'll run through. We have a couple items. We have it broken down between roadway, freight, with a couple categories, which are network connectivity, safety, congestion, and then getting into more of traffic operations. And so what we talk about when we say needs, we obviously, we hear the needs about 8126, for example, and safety concerns, geometric concerns, those type of things. But there's also kind of opportunities out there when we look into the future. For example, the 357 extension, which has been studied by TDOT here this past fall, looking at a couple alternatives. So I'll just kind of run through these, go through the categories, and then see if there's any discussion. So, and the numbering does not mean any priority. It's just a labeling here. But the 8126 interchange, we've talked about that a lot. The number 2 there, the 357 extension, again, when we talk about the stakeholder interviews, the economic development workshop, this southeast portion of the study area along the interstate, out near the airport, huge opportunity for future growth. And of course, the 357 study, kind of looking at 2 alternatives that would go up to SR 126. Ideally, if you look at this from a functional classification network standpoint, like to see kind of that north-south route over on the eastern side of the metropolitan planning area. We've heard about number 3 there, for example, a lot of discussion about kind of almost cut-through traffic, if you want, where the movement between Virginia, Tennessee, along Bloomingdale Road, and it starts to get into some other issues that we've heard about, and we know that road is a narrow, winding road, not the best. You know, if you're not from the area, you're probably not going to take it, but locals will kind of cut through there. Number 4, US 23 alternate. So again, we know previous plans have talked about Moccasin Gap. We're not calling this a Moccasin Gap project or saying that project is needed. Know the history about that. We know the challenges. I think what we're identifying here from an LRTP perspective is simply calling out the fact that 23 is the main route north and south in and out of Virginia and in and out of our metropolitan planning area. And if something were to happen, you know, a natural event or something else that were to shut down that corridor for an extended period of time, there really is limited options of getting around there. So again, this might be a need that doesn't necessarily have a solution, but it's something that we think is important to at least put out there from that perspective, especially when you start to look at it from FAST Act and resiliency and those type of things when we're addressing issues within the metropolitan planning area. And then the 5th item there, accommodating potentially intermodal activity at some point in the future. So we did have discussions with Eastman. You know, they told us that they tend to approach looking at intermodal rail trucking activity on like a 5-year basis. You know, short term, they really see trucking still being the predominant mode that they would be looking at, but, you know, not really ruling out anything down the road that maybe there could be an intermodal facility that were to happen in this area. I'll just kind of keep running through. We can come back and hit on all of these when we're
Jim.
Hey, Jim.
Yeah, go ahead.
It's Jimmy. The perks of being able to chair today, I get to hand it off to my good friend Blake, because he and I looked at each other when we saw that slide. Kind of, we'll get a little bit of edit on that slide, but I'll let the more articulated speaking Blake tackle that.
Okay.
Jim, I'll say, while I do not disagree that a secondary north-south connection certainly be needed at some time in the future, I want to be really cautious here at how we label this and how we speak about this. The Moccasin Gap bypass was a solution that was looked at many years ago. It is not viable. It will not be funded within the VDOT system as it is structured today. The funds are not there. It does not meet a VTrans need. Going back to our state's transportation plan, I think you have to hinge everything on the needs that we show today, and showing a multi-million-dollar connection potentially is something that would be frowned upon when looked at that long-range transportation plan. Again, I think it's okay to have conversations and items in here about a north-south connection, because certainly if something were to happen with the railroad, we would have an issue. But with that being said, for as long as the railroad has been there, there has not been an issue. So I don't have too much problems with number 4 being here, but it needs a large asterisk placed beside of it with some discussion points, because we are pivoting away from the Moccasin Gap bypass and everything that we have with the MTPO.
Yep, and we were told that the Moccasin Gap would not be a project in there. So that is, and I should state that, again, this is the very high level. We've been working quite a bit with the MPO staff to go through more detailed projects that we're starting to evaluate. And so, again, we will not reference that, or did not envision that as being a Moccasin Gap specifically here, but again, more from a need that, you know, really not having a solution, I think, at this point, but, you know, I think it's worth having some discussion mention of it in the plan. So.
Okay, you're good to go on.
Okay. So safety, try to run through this fairly quickly here. Again, 8126 interchange came up again. You know, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that. Everybody knows the issues there. The truck climbing lanes, obviously, from the freight movement acceleration are important here along the interstate, the heavy truck traffic that we have. And then the circles up there, we initially did kind of look at the top intersection location or crash locations for the whole area. And most of that generally popped up if you're looking at for the entire MPO. It's more concentrated really in the Kingsport area. So we divided the area up to look at kind of Virginia. You know, I'm guessing that this doesn't really surprise anybody in terms of where those might be popping up. We looked at kind of the Hawkins County and obviously 11W, and then we looked more at Sullivan County. And again, most of those are concentrated along 11W. There's one out here at 36 as well. So those again are in terms of safety, what we'd be looking at. We have run a preliminary model. We've gone back and are making some refinements to the model, but based upon what we're seeing and also what we're hearing from stakeholder conversations, there's really a couple areas popping up in the model that obviously are showing congestion, 1 and 2. So that being SR 36 and also Interstate 26 south of 81. This number 3 up here along Bloomingdale Road is actually more of a from a just a restricted right-of-way, small 2-lane narrow road up there that we had some stuff popping up. And then 4 and 5 along Stone Drive or 11W here are segments that are showing up as well that would be considered congested. Now there are some other areas that might go back, and you know, I think from the mapping, you know, the 2693 interchange, and so there might be some additional things we add on here, but that's some of the primary things we're seeing. And then from a traffic operations standpoint, and this is really kind of where we heard a lot about access management. And of course, you know, there's overlap here, right? When we talk access management, we're you know, we're really getting into safety. We're talking about congestion, overall operations. And so I think, you know, the first one, kind of Stone Drive, we heard a lot about, and access management, kind of, again, looking back at some of those safety concerns. This is really looking at existing. Number 2, when you get out here, and this was one of the areas that we talked about with our economic development workshop. And I think there's really, this is really kind of more emphasizing an opportunity that we have in the future, that there are some access management issues that were identified out here that are existing. But there's also this opportunity for this area to grow. And if we can get ahead of that with land use planning, site planning, potentially a frontage road system that would better accommodate access, control access, that's what we're kind of highlighting there. 23 up in Virginia, we've talked about that. And then 36, really from 81 up to the state line is a corridor that's been mentioned quite often and has a number of issues there. So just to kind of wrap up this section, you know, you're probably looking at that and saying, what the heck, you know, it's got all this stuff on here. It's all cluttered. But, you know, I think this really kind of tells the story. It's, you know, you start to look at the safety concerns, the network connectivity that we've talked about along 81, 26. We've talked about the congestion, the truck climbing lanes, the congestion north of 81 along 36. We've talked about connectivity issues, congestion issues, access management. Start to see this along with all of the safety hotspots. And, you know, and I think the story starts to come together here of what are the areas and the needs that we need to be looking at. And then as we really start to move into evaluating those projects, you know, are we addressing these needs and looking at things, you know? So So I'll pause there, see if anybody has any questions. I can back up to the other slides if it's a little easier to look at, but I'll just pause there for a minute.
Doesn't appear to be any.
Okay. All right. So public transportation, this one's a little bit shorter. And I think we've covered a lot of the issues already. So I think when we really talk about transit, we have to frame this around obviously what's happened with COVID and every transit agency across the country. The first thing is really looking at CAT's short-term service and how that's going to function, and so right before COVID hit, the transit agency had implemented some new fixed routes, and really not enough time to give that system, an opportunity really to, get into use and see how it works and everything. And so there is the ongoing study, which my understanding is there should be recommendations coming soon, but that study is kind of looking at should the system go to a demand response, all demand response? Could it be a hybrid system of some fixed routes, some demand response? So that really is going to determine to a large extent where we had with the LRTP discussion of transit in the area. I've highlighted 3 areas where I think there's, fall under this kind of need of expanded service area, and they're all a little bit different. So 2A out there, we've talked about 357, the new high school, the airport. We heard from various stakeholders about the need to get transit out there. Again, how that's done, I think is, something that could be looked at through the regional transit study. 2B up there is, again, that project that's really been talked about before, I think, is the MEOC connector with the park and ride. And 2C, kind of serving Mount Carmel, Churchill, in particular Mount Carmel. And I think there's been interest there before about potentially tying into a fixed route service. And we've, in talking with NetTrans, we've heard about how, they connect and provide service outside of these areas. In terms of kind of that regional service, this is really getting into that Tri-City study that we talked about there. Again, is there the demand? What is the actual transit demand linking up here? And so really sounds like a great opportunity for if that study is moving ahead. And I think just some additional items from a transit standpoint, in the short term, the LRTP is looking out 20 years. Short term, really understanding what the COVID impacts are going to be and how that impacts really that fixed route service. Continued coordination with CATS, NetTrans, MEOC. Again, I think we had a great discussion, some good conversation about things moving forward. NetTrans even threw out there that the possibility of maybe working with the MTPO and converting some of their vehicles to alternative fuels and doing projects like that. And then of course CATS looking into software, hardware investments, automatic passenger counters, and if they did it, possible transition to a demand responsive system. So again, could get very expensive, but those are things that are being looked at from the transit perspective. And then the last area in terms of non-motorized, we've been working very closely with Gresham Smith on this, and I think one of the great things with this LRTP is that, a lot of times we don't have the opportunity for somebody to really dig in deep on the bicycle and pedestrian planning. And so the work that they're doing on that study, which will, sounds like it will be wrapping up in the next month or so, is going to provide that really great detailed information on what projects will be moving forward. But we've been coordinating because, obviously the bike ped plan is flying at the 5,000, 10,000 foot level, and we're up kind of at the 35,000 foot level. But to we identified three kind of categories, and again, this was in discussions with them. Regional connections was the first one, and we've put the Greenbelt in as just a reference there. One of the things that we saw and we talked about was kind of, are there connections really beyond the Kingsport area? And there really weren't a whole lot. And so when we talk regional, a lot of these are still kind of expanding connections to the fringe. And one of the things that they mentioned was the possibility of bike lanes on US 23 connecting down to the existing bike facilities on the Tennessee side. A second thing that they're looking at is kind of more of a, what I would call a low stress facility that would be a connection from Virginia down into Tennessee and over towards the Mount Carmel area. The third item, again, when we talk about the 357 extension, potentially making sure that we have bike facilities along there. So, and I believe that included a path as part of those alternatives. And then when you look at US 11W, we talked a lot about this area out to the west just needing general overall, sidewalks and bicycle accommodations and improving that. The second area was kind of critical local connections. One of the things that Gresham Smith was highlighting was really kind of this Fort Henry SR 36 kind of a parallel connection connecting into Colonial Heights neighborhood. Just the need to really make that and bring it up to the green belt. The second thing, while it's a small little piece there, is the West End green belt connection. I think you guys all know about that, and just getting that up to 11W. The East End, looking at a little bit further extension of the green belt at some point. And then Stone Drive improvements, number 4 there. So again, one of the main themes that we heard from the bike ped planning was 11W east-west all the way through the MPO area is critical. And while it parallels the green belt, there's still a need for sidewalks, pedestrian accommodations, crossings, those type of improvements that we need to be looking at. Last point that we're not showing on here, which was a main driver of their planning process, was connecting origin and destination zones that were identified throughout the MPO area. And so their plan will look at trying to provide a comprehensive connection. Last area, and this kind of gets back to one of the things that we talked about in terms of the goals and objectives with tourism and supporting economic activity. So we talked about the green belt having this great resource and really looking at opportunities to connect off of the green belt. So making, almost kind of, we talk a lot about first last mile connections with transit, but almost same thing with the green belt. How do we connect off of there to businesses and activity centers? The second thing was the Meadowview conference area. So looking at a couple connections that would go from there to connect up to the green belt. And then the third thing that we heard and was also mentioned was Eastman area, and also captures a lot of just downtown Kingsport as well, is improving the ability for people to walk or bike to work in those areas. So that really similar, again, just a combined map, highlights some of the main themes that what we're doing from the LRTP perspective is really kind of setting up the bike and pedestrian study that will have the more detailed improvements. So that's kind of my last slide there that I have on the needs and opportunities. Any questions?
I mean, just throw in,
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear there. Okay, are we good? Did I
I can hear you, but
Hey, Jim, Bill
Oh, there we
said
go.
Northeast State
Yeah,
is a opportunity to study. Is that right?
no. Jimmy, could you repeat that?
Northeast State, what is it? Technical college?
Community college.
Community college.
Okay.
Any guy talk about it.
Talk about
Tennessee School.
transfer to some type of service out there.
Some type of transit service or something out there is what Bill's saying, Jim.
Yep, we did hear about that from the stakeholder. We had somebody in there that was talking about that.
Now, are we talking about out at the airport or out at Allendale?
I think
Airport.
airport.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Any other comments, questions? So we are, yeah, go ahead.
I think you were just getting feedback.
Oh, okay. So we are, as I mentioned at the beginning, we have gone through the previous plan, the projects. We've spent a lot of time with the MPO trying to clean up those projects and developing a new list that we're going to be modeling a number of the projects in there. And so we're moving along with that. So there is still a lot of technical things happening here again, but we wanted to kind of give you an update on, you know, what we've been hearing from the public stakeholders and technical analysis and really where it's kind of leading us. So we are, just to talk about next steps, we are finalizing the model. We've made some model refinement based upon the preliminary runs that we've had. We're cleaning up a couple capacity issues on the coding. So we're going to be in a position to have the new results here very soon. We spent time going through the projects last time around to identify committed projects that should be in the base year model, what projects should be included for the 2030 run, and then what should be included for our 2045 run. So we will be doing project evaluation, and as of right now, we've been talking with the MPO staff about coming back for maybe a workshop in June. I know the MPO meeting, next MPO meeting doesn't happen for a while, but we were thinking maybe coming back with some results and share that information with you more on the project side and maybe get some feedback there. But if there aren't any questions, Jimmy, I think I'll turn this back over to you for the action item as far as the goals and objectives go. And I know there were maybe some additional discussion on that.
Thank you, Jim. Appreciate it. Good job. I guess really moving on to 6, I'll pass it to Bill, but are you using your mic?
Yeah, Leslie,
Not sure if anybody's talking.
Yeah, can you handle it?
Yeah.
All right.
We were trying to use Michael's mic since he was sitting next to Bill.
Oh, okay.
So there was some discussion. You can hear me, Jim, right?
Yes.
Oops, I had my speakers off. So you can hear me, Jim?
Yep.
Okay. So there was some discussion from Troy about that multimodal and tourism item. I'm wondering, could we just split it into 2, like support multimodal investments, especially bicycle and pedestrian enhancements, period, promote tourism and help contribute to the local and regional economy? Troy?
Yeah, I think that sounds fine. It just so it's not lumping it all into one, just saying the only thing we're promoting is the economic and tourism side.
Yep.
Especially for the transportation folks. But yeah, I think anything like that, just wordsmith that a little bit, and I think it'd be just fine.
Any other comments from the executive board? You all okay with that change? They're all nodding.
Okay.
And the red is the only changes from the 2040 goals and objectives.
That's all we're voting on.
Yes, just the goals and objectives. So the goals and objectives with, as presented, but with that one change to make that item C, take out the word that, make it 2 sentences.
I think the ideal way to start goals with need to get just a little bit to
Bill's just saying that, wanted to get into the study a little bit before we decided on goals and objectives. So that's why it's being presented now instead of earlier in the process. And Amber says she can only absorb so much.
Any other comments, concerns, further discussion?
What about, like had mentioned that it needs to mesh with Ross plan.
So as far as the long-range transportation goals and objectives, for what we have in here, as far as it meshing, it will mesh with V-Trans or statewide transportation plan when I look at them. The only item, of a little bit of concern was the north-south connector, but I think it's going to stay away from Moxie Gap bypass. I think we're in good shape.
Okay.
Blake, was it the bypass or was it just the interchange? So,
It's the bypass that's a concern because that's no longer.
yeah, I understand.
Bible.
The interchange, it's almost like 2 separate projects. The interchange itself there, 2358, 421, and then there's the bypass, which always has been kind of question.
We've looked at the interchange on a few different bases. We've had a smart scale project there a couple of times. Didn't really deal with the interchange itself, but more so how it interacted with the gas station immediately adjacent here. We have a little bit of a, not really congestion, but more of a reliability issues, mirroring accidents there and safety. So we do have some projects there we think will help take care of that. So that's still a viable thing to look at if that is.
Jim, if you'll stop sharing your screen, I'll share mine.
Sure.
Any other comments? This is an action item, correct?
Yes.
I will entertain a motion.
Make a motion to approve the long-range transportation plan goals and objectives as presented with the editorial suggestions as given by Trustee George.
Second.
Got a motion and second, and I'm sure we'll go back toward that motion. That's exactly the way he said it. Roll call vote, please.
Vice Chair Jimmy Atkins,
Aye.
Blake Ayler,
Aye.
Chase Milner,
Aye.
Rhonda Sawyer, Michael Thompson,
Aye.
Amber Torbett.
Motion passes. Thank you very much. Moving right along. Item number 7, project updates, state and federal partner updates. Is there an order you want to go through to be more efficient, effective?
No,
Leslie?
I'm trying to find my agenda now and I can't. I'll have to open it back up. Let me see here.
Well, I'll go ahead and let our VDOT representative give updates while you're looking for the agenda.
Thank you, Jim. I'll go through just a couple of stuff pretty quickly. Currently under construction, we do have, as has been mentioned here, on US 23 Access Management Project. That does include a park and ride lot at Filter Plant Road. That is currently under construction. If you drive through there today, we have had a little bit of issues with it. There have been 2 slides due to the massive amount of rain that we have received lately. So they're working to fix those slides and come up with solutions to try to stabilize that rain. We had a little bit of a design change on the project at about midway through. Some of the pavement depth would look a little bit different once we put into it. We noticed there was some issues. So we're working through these. We do estimate, from what I remember, off of my memory, can be concerned sometimes, but it should be completed by years. So we'll be looking at that project. That's a good one. Bill's mentioned another park and ride lot that certainly help that region. Jimmy mentioned there's a lot of impromptu park and ride lots that are within the Gate City region, especially going to the numerous prison systems that we have north of the. One item I wanted to mention, I mentioned that at Bristol's MTPO meeting last week, we currently do have access at Virginia to MetroQuest surveying tool that's predominantly utilized for transportation surveys only, that's rewarded designed for. It's a very robust surveying piece of equipment. We have been able to give access to that platform to our MPO partners. Rex at the Bristol MPO has taken advantage of that. He's using that for his long-range transportation plan update. His survey at Bristol, just in case anyone is curious, will start next Monday. I believe that is the 17th, and will run for about 3.5 weeks. We have offered that same service at Kingsport. I know Leslie's been in touch with us. I think
It's going now.
okay, so
I have access.
okay, good. So we've granted access to Kingsport, and I think we're going to work on our transportation plan to use that in the next push we do here. I will also give our services to our community relations department. We're using this in Bristol as well. We do a robust outreach to multiple social media aspects, and it's tended to work very well. So we'll use Twitter and Facebook and Snapchat and multiple different things to hit all the populations within this region. If that is something you do want to take advantage of, just communicate with me early on in the process, paperwork we fill out. We'll go through our community relations, and throughout the entire time the survey is open, they will continuously boost that for you within this entire region, and they will use the Tennessee regions as well and zip codes to boost that. So we always want to try to help increase the amount of participation we have. So if that is something you're interested in, just be sure to get this to me pretty early. It takes about 4 weeks is about what they like to tell us in the office. They like to know ahead of time. So we're more than happy. I think that's it.
Thank you, Blake.
I think you want to go to Federal Highway, Elizabeth, or are you still with us?
Yes, thanks, Leslie. Just 2 quick updates for the board. First of which is the U.S. Department of Transportation recently issued the Notice of Funding Opportunity for the RAISE grant program. Some of you may remember this was formerly branded as BUILD or TIGER before that. And as in past cycles, capital projects and planning studies are eligible activities for this program. $1 billion will be awarded nationally with up to $25 million for an individual project. Applications are due through grants.gov by July 12th at 5 p.m. Eastern. And more information on this funding opportunity, including a series of webinars, is available on the website. So after the meeting, I will send that link to Leslie and Bill for incorporation into the notes if anybody's interested. And the second update is, as some of you I'm sure are aware, that the U.S. Census Bureau is still taking comments on its proposed criteria for defining urban areas for the 2020 census. While Federal Highway Administration is not directly involved in this process, these urban area designations and boundaries are used in our program, so we are definitely keeping tabs on them. We're not aware of anything outside of what's already been published publicly, but as soon as we hear anything more, we will be sure to share that with our MPO and state DOT partners. I'll also share with Leslie and Bill the link to the Federal Register notice if anybody wanted to comment on that proposed rulemaking for how to define urbanized areas. So those are the only 2 updates I had. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Matt?
Okay. I don't have a lot to say other than I think you are aware that the MPO meeting tomorrow is going to focus a lot on the programming side of things. So we're going to have Brian Hurst do most of the talking tomorrow. We're particularly interested in, and like we've talked in the past, we want to try to give the opportunity for the MPOs to sort of understand the programming process as it relates to TDOT and our pay-as-you-go dynamic, and find out how we can incorporate some of these topics like advanced construction and how that fits in with your long range plan update could work. So I urge you to make sure, one of you can attend that and be able to ask some questions if you need to. I think that's all I have.
We'll both be on there. I had sent some questions into Jennifer when she sent the survey out.
Okay, sounds good.
Hey, B, do you have anything?
No, Leslie, I don't have any.
Troy, do you have anything else? You're cutting in and out really bad.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
All right. So what we're dealing with, the 3-year plan's out, and we plan on coming and having a chat with you all at the MPO meeting, maybe at the next one, to look at the 3-year plan and how your all's project rankings last year worked with the 3-year plan. PD, Dexter was planning on coming, but potentially PD and myself will come in and give a presentation, just kind of comparing the two of them and seeing how things work. So we're ready to rank projects when it comes in next time. That's all I have.
Okay. Eric Wilson, do you have some project updates?
Sure, can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Great. Yeah, we'll talk about the kind of the middle of that list there, starting with State Route 126, which you have shown as phase 1. It did not get identified in the 3-year plan for construction. However, we're preparing to move forward as it just in case it does. We have some other funding sources that could come in next year, so we've been asked to go ahead and continue development of that. We're currently in the right-of-way acquisition phase. Believe it or not, we got quite a bit of progress. I think we're definitely over 50%, maybe closer to 75% completed. I would say we probably still have a good year left of acquisition to go. I currently have it scheduled in December 2022 letting. I should have probably some more guidance during the next meeting to see if that's going to move up or move forward or go back into the 2023 fiscal year. Phase 2, which is a section from East Cooks Valley Road to I-81. We're still early on in that process. We've submitted our initial set of preliminary plans for internal review, and we're working on the environmental document now on that. It's not identified in the next phase, which would be right away in the 3-year plan. So we'll move forward with the preliminary plans and just see how that's funded next year. So we're still several years away on that one, just as it goes through the funding process. State Route 93. There's 3 sections. I believe Michael Dick's going to talk about the commonly known Fall Branch section in Washington County. That's one's under construction. I do have the Sullivan section. Bear with me a second. I'm going to grab just make sure you're all familiar with this section I'm referring to. This is what we call the Rock Bluff section. Sorry about this. And the limits of that one are Morgan Lane is south of Bayleton Road. This actually goes in Sullivan and Washington County. That one did get funding in the 3-year plan for construction in year 1. So it's officially, so to speak, funded. That means the earliest we can let this project is December of this year, and we plan on developing it to be delivered in December of this year for letting, which means it could be under construction early next year. So as we move forward through this months, we'll keep moving towards that, getting that date. So that one's finally moved forward. And it's the 3rd section, which is in Sullivan County from south of Horse Creek to north of Derby Drive, there in the industrial park. It did not get funding in the 3-year plan for construction. However, we are moving forward with the idea that it could get funding. We're basically getting it shovel ready, which means we're going to move forward with construction plans and continue to develop the plans. So it'll probably be the earliest it could let would be late next year, but that could change. Sullivan, Washington 36. They're out 75 to I-81. That project, or Fort Henry Drive, that one I think I'm missing it last time. That one is still, survey is underway on that. We anticipate to be done survey this summer, start preliminary design in the fall. And that it will be looking from that, we'll be looking for the project to get funded for right away and a future 3-year plan. So that we'll be working on preliminary plans through next year. There's an I-81 ITS expansion. We don't work with those, but it's currently showing in the 2023 fiscal year for letting. That, as far as I know, that's still on track. 4 Robinson Drive, bridge over Dry Creek. That one's been going back and forth with our structures office on the type of structure that would work for that replacing that bridge. We have decided that we are going to move forward with a bridge structure instead of a box culvert structure. With that decision made, we can now move into the right-of-way acquisition phase this summer. And that one will take about a year to buy the right-of-way. So next summer, fall 2022 is when we anticipate that to let. And that's the projects I got. You can, I don't know if Mike, you want to go ahead or if you want to take questions now.
Is there any questions for Eric on those projects?
I've got a question. You get over.
Yes, walk over here, Bill. Bill's walking over to my computer.
The 126 project has been going on for a long time and making progress. And I'm just curious, it's not on a 3-year plan, but you're purchasing right away. What does that mean? Does that mean it might get stalled out with right away, or would it be just, it takes that long to get it funded?
I can't speak to the decision making of it not being in the 3-year plan. That's probably something I think Troy was mentioning. Y'all would have that discussion when they come up to kind of explain that. That's something of the subject line, Troy. Just kind of explain about that.
We'll talk offline then. That's fine.
Well, that was one of the questions that I've submitted for Jennifer too, for our discussion tomorrow that Matt was talking about. Because Brian Hurston then will be on the MTPO TDOT call tomorrow. So that was one of my questions is, why are we not seeing these projects when we expect them to move to another phase in the next 3 years? Why are they not in the 3-year plan? Because we only have one thing in the 3-year plan.
Yeah, that's on that's programming and kind of Dexter type question. We'll on our end, we're going to develop the plans as when the right of way is purchased. Our plan is to have construction plans ready to go. And
you'll get it ready, and it's up to them to give you the money.
There you go.
Again, I guess that's a discussion we'll have tomorrow. Or whenever we get a chance.
You couldn't have said it better. I couldn't have said it better.
Anything else for Eric? Okay, Michael Dick, you want to go on with the ones that are in construction?
Sure. I guess we can talk about the middle section of the 93 improvements. This is the one from Davis to Fire Hall. Currently, we've got a completion date of September 30th on that project. Everything seems to be going according to plan right now. Contractor is they're placing water line right now. Once that gets finished, they'll be installing some storm drainage up there, and that's it. That should wrap that project up. And I misspoke there. That one's not September. That one's actually in August. So the first section of 93 should be complete by August of this year. The two in Hawkins County, we have had pre-cons on those. Completion date on both of those projects is also in August. We're currently waiting on a railroad agreement from Norfolk Southern to proceed with that one. So contractor has been in touch with them. They're making some headway, but currently there's no activity on that project. Safety project, we don't see any reason why we still can't complete that project by August also. The resurfacing grouping you've got up there, 355. Currently, we've got curb ramp installation and milling and paving operations on that particular route. Contract completion for that one is May 31st. 93 from I-26 State Route 1. We held the pre-construction conference. Tentative start date for that one is first week of June. Completion date for that is September 30th. The I-26 from the Welcome Center to the Washington County line, we had a pre-construction conference on that one. Tentatively, they've set a start date of May 23rd on that project. And the contract completion date on that one is September 30th also. The last one that I will mention is the Memorial Boulevard, Fort Henry Drive intersection improvements. We recently had a pre-con on that one also. Contractor was tentatively set up to start installation of traffic control signs this week. And the contract completion date for that project is October 31st. So we've got 3 wrapping up and the rest of them are kind of just getting off the ground here.
Thank you. Any other questions for TDOT about their projects? Then we'll move to the local projects.
I guess this is for Eric Wilson, State Route 347, Rock Springs Road.
Eric, did you hear that? 347 Rock Springs Road. Is there an update on it?
Oh, I missed that one, sorry. Yes, that one, we are planning on having a public meeting either late 2021 or early 2022. That one's moving forward again, and right now I've got a tentative schedule of right-of-way starting next summer, right-of-way acquisition, and the earliest we would anticipate that going to construction would be late in 2023.
Thank you. Michael, do you have the local projects?
It's gonna be weird, but I'm gonna leave that off so that I'm doing my so the West End Greenbelt project is in NEPA. Stone Drive sidewalk is under construction with a completion date the end of May the 15th is the completion date on it. Main Street, we'll be doing the section 4F reports for that was required because of the time lapse have been completed. The historic property that is affected has agreed that is a de minimis impact, and we'll be doing the public hearing for public comment on that finding starting this Sunday. The ad will run until June the 18th. And we're still trying to work through, there's a piece of property that is owned by CSX under their holding group of Holston Land Development. That's not a actual piece of right-of-way property, but it's where their office is located, and they will not sell us right away. So we're trying to work through that with TDOT to see if they'll be able to accept a license agreement, or if we can pull the sidewalk out of the project so that we can move the project forward. We are hoping to be able to let that at the end of June. If we can get this, the Island Road rebuild. Randy, you got an update on that? It's still setting. You haven't heard any update on NEPA? You're going to hear this a lot, guys, unfortunately. Resurfacing grouping, all of those, which should be a simple categorical exclusion, is again setting in NEPA. But that would be our one thing from the Kingsport project side. If there's anything on the TDOT NEPA side that can get unshook, we would appreciate the help. The Brickyard Bicycle and Pedestrian Bridge, there's 2 different projects going on there at the same time. There's a Surface Transportation Block Grant project that y'all approved through this board that we have a signed contract, and we are in the process of securing our design professionals on that. We've also applied for a grant through the
grant
Transportation Alternatives Program, and we are expecting that TDOT will announce those this month.
Probably within the next few weeks, hopefully.
So we're hopeful that we can get some construction funding through that program there. And I think that's everything.
And I would point out the resurfacing grouping you see on the screen is actually a local project, whereas the resurfacing grouping that they were talking about are TDOT projects. Is there any questions about any of the projects?
Thank you all for the updates. Bill,
We got
quickly.
somebody from the airport. I want to thank him. I've been 30 years. There are some improvements going to happen on 75 there at the airport. There's a new signal and some other work there that hasn't been mentioned in the list, but it's going to happen. I'll give you details.
Do anybody on the computer have anything else? Sorry about the technical difficulties to begin with. I mean, could have probably been a little bit better set up, and it went a little better when we did the test run Tuesday. We actually had sound through the TV, so I don't know what happened with that, but like I said, we will be moving to our new building in the next few weeks, so hopefully we'll have a little bit better capabilities over there, and if we can continue to do these hybrid meetings, we'll get the kinks worked out.
Leslie, this is Troy. I want to thank you and Mike for doing that, being able to work through that and make that happen. It's extremely appreciative from our headquarters folks at Federal Highway to be able to join us with that, and our regional folks.
Yeah, so we had people from Tampa. The AECOM presentation was from Tampa, and TDOT headquarters, of course, in Nashville. We got some in Region 1 down in Knoxville. So it does get more people in the room, even if they're not physically here with us. Okay.
Last main bullet item, public comments. Do you have any comments from the public? Hearing none, I gladly entertain a motion.
So moved.
Motion by Michael, second by Blake.
Okay. I'm not doing a roll call on that one.
Proclamation. Acclamation. Let's go.
Thank you all.
Thank you all. Good job.
Thank you.
Stop the recording.
Stay safe and healthy.